Hey, Kishore.
What's up, Will?
I learned a technical term this morning.
How technical?
Yeah, it's fairly self-explanatory, but I'd never heard it before. It's called an electrocution rescue pole.
Rescue pole?
Pole. Do you know what it's? Do you like? What is this? What does this put in your head when you think about it?
Weirdly, it puts into my head one of those PSAs after the end of G.I. Joe, where one of them comes up and is like, "Don't touch the downed electrical power line. I have this magic pole that will actually move it to the side of the road."
I just think about the stop all the downloading one. But yeah, it's, when you go to chemistry lab in college, you learn about the eye wash station, you learn about the emergency shower, you learn about the fire bucket, all of the, the sand, the place where the broken glass goes, all of that stuff. We didn't have an electrocution rescue pole. It's apparently a pole that you use to knock somebody who's gotten grab themselves onto a high voltage source so you can knock them off of it. That's a non-conducting pole.
It's a baseball bat for helping people that are getting electrocuted.
It's a long baseball bat. We always used 2x4s for that when I was a kid.
Yeah, I mean, the wood is right there. What do you need a specialized pole for? Is it maybe it's weighted well so you can really smack them with it? Yeah,
or maybe it has a long end so you can wedge them off. I don't know. When I was a kid, my dad bought an embroidery machine that used two-phase power from Japan. It was like a 240 volt multi-phase power thing. And, you could have hired an electrician to wire that up, or you could have just done it yourself. And it was an old building that had fuses and stuff like that. And when my dad was putting the fuses in, he was like, okay, so here's what we're going to do. I'm going to stand on this 2x4. And then you're going to hold this other long 2x4. And if I stop talking, you're going to knock me hard enough to knock me off the wall. And I was like, oh, I'm ready for this. Let's go.
Festivus in your house really was a little bit different.
Look, growing up in the South and with a DIY aesthetic, sometimes things happen, Kishore. Welcome to Brad and Will Made a Tech Pod. I'm Will.
I'm not Brad. I'm Kishore. This is, how many times have I been here now? Too many?
So I thought this was your fifth timer club. I thought we were going to have to get you a jacket, but we got one more, I think.
Oh, my goodness. I am a four-timer. Does that make me the Dan Aykroyd of this podcast? What I have no status whatsoever, but people have to put up with me.
So here's the question. Would you rather be the Dan Aykroyd or the Steve Martin?
Never the Dan Aykroyd. You never want to be the Dan Aykroyd. Have you heard Dan Aykroyd actually talk on any video about his sincere beliefs? It is horrifying.
Okay, I mean, that look, of that first round, it's is he bad? Is he worse, or is Chevy Chase worse?
Okay, let's be clear. I don't want to hang out with Chevy Chase. But I don't want to be stuck in one of those holiday conversation catch-ups with Dan Aykroyd.
Oh, yeah, you don't want him to be the uncle.
One of the original, real off the deep end UFO guys.
Oh, that's right. Okay. So he's an Art Bell guy, though. He's from back when it was funny and charming and not kind of creepy and scary.
Well, I think there were so few of them back at that point. We'd be like, oh, that's nice. That's nice that you believe in this. Now it feels like a little too serious to entertain.
But okay, so at the same time, if he didn't have this deep, personally held belief in the paranormal, we probably wouldn't have Ghostbusters.
This is true. By the way, is this a deep dive about Ghostbusters? Is that what we're doing this week?
Wow, that is you're really good at this podcasting thing, Kishore. No, this is our now annual year in science review. So Brad's out. He's dealing with some personal stuff this week and probably next week as well. So we have a rotating host of guest hosts to come in and fill the Brad chair. So Kishore, you're our Brad for this week.
I will do my best. I certainly do not have the man bun nor the endearing humility, but I will try to deepen my voice.
I don't know how long the man bun's going to last. It might be short for the world, honestly. But yeah, so last year we did this. People seem to really like it. So we were planning to bring you back anyway. And then Brad, got to do it a little bit earlier than we kind of had thought we were going to. And you're here. We're here to talk about science. Kishore, you're one of my favorite science communicators. If for folks who don't know Kishore Hari is one of our favorite science communicators and has done everything from like hosting nerd nights for years and years and years in San Francisco to other stuff that I probably like. I don't know. You did things with things and got in trouble, and sometimes it was good trouble, and like it was a good time.
I'm at the stage of my career where I can say I have scienced and just use it as a verb and feel pretty comfortable with it. This is one of my favorite shows of the year because we get to talk about the year that was. And there was some incredible stuff. There was some harrowing stuff. And there was a lot of stuff that made you go, in the middle.
So I guess let's start with the one that made me go, in the middle, because I didn't actually know. I didn't know when you put this one on the list, I didn't know what it was. I had to go look it up, and then I was like, oh.
Which one is that?
I'm just starting at the top. This is the GLP-1 receptor agonist, which is a new class. Well, it's not a new class. It's a new application for an old class of drugs, right?
It's not a new class. This is a glucagon peptide receptor agonist. And you will better know them as the new weight loss drugs that have hit the market. You probably heard of Ozempic and Wegovy at this point, which are the marketing names for a class of drugs that are trying to mimic the behavior of a naturally occurring hormone in our body. These class of drugs were first sort of discovered developed in the late 90s. And the first one was approved in the early 2000s to treat type 2 diabetes. They essentially work by mimicking a hormone. It's called GLP-1. It's an incretin hormone that's produced by the L cells in your intestinal wall. Generally, this hormone is produced after food intake, within minutes after food intake. And the receptors for this hormone are found throughout the body, including your brain, intestine, and pancreas. There are three kind of crucial functions that this hormone seems to have, but we suspect there's a whole lot more that we haven't even touched upon. So first is in the hypothalamus, it seems to have an effect on your sense of satiety. So how full you feel after eating a meal. It also stimulates secretion of insulin in the pancreas. And lastly, and this is not super well understood, it seems to somehow slow the movement and processing of food in your stomach and small intestine, like literally slows the process of food moving through there. So initially, because of how it stimulated secretion of insulin in the pancreas, this was used as a type 2 diabetes drug. And most often it was developed to be taken daily and to kind of regulate sugar levels within your body. And then over the past few years, about like 2015, people are like, we're noticing weight loss in these people on this drug for an extended period of time.
That's when the pharmaceutical people's eyes turn into dollar signs, I assume, somewhere around
and
then.
it goes like full like Bugs Bunny, like Ayuga.
Yeah.
And they started to really think like, how can we take advantage of this? And they started to reformulate this GLP-1 drug to kind of take advantage of some characteristics. So the drug, and I'll talk about semaglutide, which is Wegovy. It's not a perfect match to the peptide, to the hormone. It's about a 90% match. It has some like structural differences, some of which are intentional. So I mentioned GLP-1, it breaks down in your body and it's secreted in your body very soon after eating. And then it breaks down in your body between 1.5 and 5 minutes is its half-life in your body. Oh, wow. So it's really quick.
And is that because of the way it binds onto the receptors, it gets broken in pieces or something? Is that the mechanism?
And there's also some like enzymes that quickly break it down. Like it gets sort of more complicated as we get into that. But there's a set of processes in your body that are designed to break down that hormone pretty quickly. What they did is they designed this drug to reversibly bind to albumin, this, just a compound that's throughout your body. And it essentially doubled its half-life in your system. And what they did is with this like reformulation, they got to a clinical trial. They gave, I think it was about 3,000 people semaglutide once a week over a 16-month period. And they saw 15% weight loss in this. The placebo group and the group that was taking the drug were both given like coaching on weight loss as well. And so the placebo group lost like 2.5% of their weight, but a 15% weight loss in 16 months is just massive. It is just sort of off the scale. And then they redid the trial where at halfway through the trial, about like 20 weeks, they switched people off semaglutide and actually saw the effect. And they saw like a weight gain resume in some of those people. So it kind of has indicated to a lot of folks that you have to constantly be on this drug or its weight loss benefits to take effect. It's expensive. It's about it's about I think between $1,500 and $2,000 a month in the U.S. right now for Wegovy. But there's more of these drugs coming on the market in the coming years, so we expect that number to hopefully come down in the years ahead. But the scientific benefit here is super clear. That much weight loss in that short of a period of time is incredible. The side effects, which do exist, are mostly manageable. They're like nausea, diarrhea, that kind of GI upset.
Yeah.
And we're seeing some like long-term benefits towards heart disease and reducing stroke risk from these drugs as well. And so, yes, we need to study this.
The obesity reduction, or is it's you can't tell, right?
Hard to tell at this point. Okay. So it's probably like a bit of column A and a bit of column B. Like there's probably something going on as well. At this point, we obviously want to study this over a longer period of time to make sure there's no long-term effects, since people are going to have to stay on this drug for the benefits to persist. But this is just a complete game changer for these to hit the market.
So you said they're prescribing this to a lot of people in the US. It is expensive, but I mean, it's the cost of treating obesity, all the obesity related stuff over the long term too. Is this for people who are seriously obese, or is this doesn't seem like a casual weight loss thing?
So the clinical trial was done on people with BMIs over 30. So these are people that are not just by the definition obese, but they're on the higher end of the kind of obese spectrum.
Yeah.
So they really tested on people that really need the weight loss for the other effects. There have been some independent studies that looked at like, well, how much is this being prescribed at this point? And looking through electronic health records from the past year, they noted that like somewhere around a little more than 1 to 1.5% of Americans got a prescription for one of these drugs last year. Now that some of these people are getting prescriptions for these drugs for type 2 diabetes, but that is just a massive number. So there is anticipation that this is going to have a significant impact. If this does continue on the trajectory from the science that we see these long-term benefits without the long-term risk, this is going to be just a massive story for years to come.
Well, and presumably okay, so there's two interesting things to me. One is that this protein is absorbed in so many different places that it hits so many. I mean, this is to me kind of one of the stories of biochemistry in the last 10 years is the thing that we thought hit one place, it turns out hits 45 different places from your head to your feet, right? And it's interesting. Like this is why we haven't seen magic bullets for a lot of stuff, I think, right? One of the reasons is it's always infinitely more complicated than you think it is.
As one of my astrophysicist friend says, he always goes, biology is gross and complicated. and he's not wrong.
So, okay. And I guess let's move on to the next thing at this point is also in this kind of same category of things that are really complicated. And we're seeing some incredible breakthroughs in the last 12 to 24 months on. And it's kind of one of those things we talked about CRISPR last year, maybe the year before. I can't remember. But it kind of like this stuff is following on from that. It's following on from the CRISPR work, which let us edit and build DNA sequences, and then the mRNA vaccines that we use to treat COVID or to help prevent COVID.
Yeah, so this year, I think it was sort of a milestone year where we saw the FDA approve the first CRISPR treatment for humans, and this is for sickle cell anemia. Sickle cell anemia is a genetic linked disease that causes the development of misshapen blood cells, incredibly painful, really deleterious to long-term health. And a new drug called Casgevy was the first FDA-approved therapy using this CRISPR-Cas9 gene editing technology to treat sickle cell patients. It is now approved. The treatment is expensive, and expensive doesn't even begin to cover how expensive it is. It is like the cost of a house. Is it
personalized for each person that is the treatment, or is it just like that expensive?
It's not fully personalized in that way, where we're like each person gets like a completely different version. But it is, it's gene editing. So in that way, it is 100% personalized.
But is this the first time that's happened? Is this the first time we've had a gene editing?
Yeah, for humans, there's been some like other gene therapies and treatments that are personalized and have been hit trials. This is at like approval for a significant population. So this is outside of kind of like that like ultra rare case that we've seen. And at this point, we've seen approval, like European markets have indicated approval for this too. So this is going to be something that goes worldwide. The difference between this and a drug, this is a cure.
Yeah.
This
so
is not.
You do this and you're done.
Yeah, it's not. And there's some great articles. I think Stat had an article with one of the patients who really expressed a lot of ambivalence about it, because it is not a simple treatment. You have to be in the hospital for an extended period of time. So it's not in sort of an easy pathway to go through, but it is a cure. And rarely do we ever talk about cures.
Yeah, especially for something that is a hereditary disease like sickle cell. The other one that came up with this is the melanoma vaccine. Is vaccine the right? It's like an mRNA vaccine that supplements additional current treatments for melanoma. That is tailored, and I think they sequence the tumor, they sequence the person, and then they look for key markers, and they kind of build the cocktail off of I think 40 or 50 markers that they found that are predominant in malignant melanomas, which I thought was fascinating.
Yeah, this idea of personalized medicine is we've been talking about for going back to the Clinton administration is when we first started hearing about the idea of personalized medicine at scale in the US. But now we're actually starting to see some realities of it. Now, I think we're going to mostly see it in rare conditions for the most part, because the smaller population, there's like one genetic mutation to generally worry about. So this isn't going to hit like mainstream populations or mainstream chronic diseases anytime soon. But the idea of this, that we've actually developed enough sophistication and data sets to actually do the kind of personalization that we're talking about, is a massive step forward. I mean, the vaccine that you're talking about, like they're looking at like 34 different antigens in the tumor that they're individually sort of looking at the variants in those antigens, and then using that to actually develop the vaccine that treats this. It'll be interesting to see how effective it is over a larger pool of population, because this is for a melanoma. There's a pretty significant population that they could trial this with over a long period of time, because I think there's something like, almost 500,000 cases of melanoma a year. So like this could yield some just really interesting results about how effective these personalized therapies can be. I'm not like bringing enough like juice and energy for how exciting this stuff is. Like we just don't get treatments that are this meaningful and effective. Because we are mostly talking about like cures or essentially like reducing risk to the point of remission for the melanoma one.
Yeah, it's so this is the first of those. I know that there are other trials ongoing for like pancreatic cancer and some other. There's a specific type of cancer that seems to respond well to this. That you can rewire the immune system to go after the tumor cells. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I thought this seems like magic, and it's science magic, which is the best kind of magic because it's real.
I feel like I'm in that bad scene in the Thor movie where they're like magic and science are the same thing. Oh, no.
I mean, look, yeah, Thor wasn't the first one who said that, Kishore.
What?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah. Wasn't that an Arthur Clarke one originally?
Yes, I know. Yeah, it was Arthur C. Clarke. Yeah. I just want to be shocked that like Chris Hemsworth didn't originate this incredible line about science and magic.
I wish I could do a Chris Hemsworth voice because right now I would be like, yeah, Kishore, that was an ad lib.
I want to be innocent again. All right, one more bummer story before we talk about some fun stuff.
We haven't had any bummer stories so far. They've all been good stories so far, but we do have a bummer now. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay. Now we have a bummer story. It was the hottest year on record again.
Woo!
We did it.
Is that good or bad?
We did it, everybody. It was 0.23C warmer than the average summer this year. And when we say average summer, they always look at the summer in the northern hemisphere. So generally like June through August. And so it was about 0.23C warmer than the average summer going back to the mid 80s. It's about 1.2C warmer if you take the average summer basically from the early 20th century forward. And we saw some pretty spectacular ramifications of this warming this year with the wildfires in Canada and Hawaii. And Will, given where we live, I think, and going through wildfires in previous seasons, I have a lot of empathy for people in those areas. Hawaii, we saw an entire town obliterated by a wildfire in one of the most sad sequences of this year. So the ramifications are real.
Well, and it's one of those things. It's one of those things that there's a temptation to be like, oh, our fires were worse in California, or our fires are worse in Canada. Or what. The thing is, it's all the same fires. Like we're literally all having the same climate disaster. It's the fires in Canada, the fires in California 3 years ago, the fires in the Northwest last year, the fires in Hawaii this year. They're all the same fires, and it's just going to keep getting worse. So that's fun.
Yeah. So I saw I became aware of this kind of emerging framework for looking at risks to our biosphere that takes climate into account and kind of puts into context some of the where we should prioritize our efforts. This is called the 9 Boundaries framework. It was developed by a Swedish scientist and their team, Johan Rockström. I think it was in 2009. He developed this, and he was like looking at 9 basic threats to our biosphere, to like life existing on this planet, and evaluating by various modeling where we are in like sort of a risk pool with this. And so this was looking at stuff like ozone depletion, aerosols in the atmosphere, ocean acidification, climate change, as we've been talking about it, like greenhouse gases, that kind of stuff, biological diversity, how we're changing our land use, availability of fresh water, how nitrogen and phosphorus are flowing through our geochemical landscape, because that affects like how we can produce food. And it started to sort of create risk maps, like heat maps of how much risk we have in this. In some areas, we're doing really well. Ocean acidification is still in this kind of manageable zone where it's not massively threatening life at a scale that could lead to biosphere collapse. Hey, one for us.
Right. We're not filled with jellyfish yet.
Yeah, exactly. And then at the same time, there's stuff happening like on the mass extinction that's happening, and we're losing genetic diversity at an alarming rate. Those sort of off the scale bad that we don't often talk about. And so while climate change is bad, we're also seeing some problems in like nitrogen and phosphorus slowly flowing out of our soils. Like, and we're seeing this sort of massive loss of genetic diversity that kind of puts into like relief where we should be emphasizing our time and investment. And so there's this exceptional set of graphs and illustrations that really put out this 9 boundaries thing. It helped me really think about what the priorities are ahead. And as there's a new study out every couple weeks on climate change and these existential threats, it also kind of helped me sort of focus where I should put my attention and energy.
So where are you focusing your attention and energy, Kishore?
So I think we don't talk enough about the loss of genetic diversity. And so protection of like habitats for species, and not just like the cute ones. Yeah. Like we have to talk about all sorts of like bugs and other insects. So that kind of ecosystem level maintenance. I think that one is under discussed and needs to be more focus put on. Climate change is still like a thing that we have to talk about. I think like there's an increasing need for us to talk about like pollutants that we're putting into the environment, like microplastics, certain kinds of human made, just sort of like polluting the environment. Like it's called novel entities in this framework. And I think we should put even more attention on how we clean that stuff up. I think those are the ones that struck me as like, oh, we don't like put enough attention on us, because we're talking about really warming of the planet more so than some of these other effects they're all interconnected. But it kind of gave me a little bit of pause.
Yeah, it's so I'll put a link to the graph in the show notes so people can find it. But it's interesting because like, hey, shout outs to the ozone depletion. We solved that one. Nice job, everybody.
Did it.
But it's an interesting thing to think about, because we literally, I guess it was an easier problem because there was a unilateral solution, stop shipping CFCs, which we agreed to do as a species in the 80s. And now that problem is essentially solved. Like, I think we're seeing that stuff as less of an issue. The ozone holes are, I don't know what the opposite of depleted is, repleted. Yeah. So it's the thing to me is that, so the genetic diversity is clearly like we're in a bad moment with genetic diversity, but also if the climate continues to heat up at the current rate, then if the planet continues to heat up at the current rate, then the genetic diversity is going to get even worse, because the things that can survive, like, look, this is the year I learned about wet bulb temperatures, and it's kind of haunted me since then. So yeah, it seems like you have a big long-term problem that's coming at us like a freight train, and then a bunch of also big but slightly smaller different scale problems that maybe there's more pressing action we can take, I guess, which is the interesting thing about this chart.
Hey, it's all interconnected, so I'm not suggesting otherwise, but I think I'm into this term that you've developed now, ozone repletion.
Repletion?
Yeah, we're just going to replete the planet with genetic diversity. That sounds very creepy. Now I take that back. Take that back. That sounds very, very bad.
Well, Dockers are coming back, so the pleats are back too, Kishore.
Dockers are not coming back.
Dockers aren't coming back. We're good. We're fine.
That can't be real.
You know what is coming back though? You know what's never been hotter is the moon.
Oh, so hot.
Well, people just one side, it turns out.
We are back in like a moon race all of a sudden. And it's not just like, hey, let's all go to the moon. It's like moon on a budget is happening. I want to give a shout out to the Indian Space Research Organization, ISRO, which landed a mission on the moon at the lunar South Pole, Chandrayaan-3. I did not think this was going to happen, partially because Chandrayaan-2 had one of the most spectacular crashes on the moon in 2019.
Oh, that's the one that just hammered in at full speed, basically, right?
Well, it had kind of an explosion. It wasn't great. But they put together this mission, which included like an orbit of the moon and then a lander, the Vikram lander, which actually landed at the lunar South Pole. The total budget was somewhere between 60 and $90 million. That is like nothing in like the grand scheme of sending something to the moon. And there's just this incredible scene, like the live stream. I think there was like 10 million people that ended up watching it. It's a huge moment of like national pride. This is the first time a country outside of China has landed something on the moon in like 50 years almost. And Russia has been trying to do this and hasn't had a successful mission for landing. Obviously, we announced the Artemis mission to go back to the moon. So there's stuff happening, but just to see this done in a way that was like cheap. Is that the wrong word here?
Like, look, it's I'm trying to do the math. It's like less than a tenth of an Artemis flight, right? Because they're $1.5 billion each or something. Mm-hmm. So yeah, like, I mean, we sent an Artemis capsule and it just circled the moon for a little bit and then came back. And that cost way more than $60 to $90 million.
Turns out when you try to send like humans places, it gets expensive.
I mean, it's like that. Like Chris Roberts has spent 4 of these missions making his space game. Boy, recording these early in the morning is a problem. It is Roberts' Star Citizen. Sorry. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he spent hundreds of millions of dollars making Star Citizen. He could have gone to the actual moon for that.
Yeah,
he hired the right people.
And you could have had an awesome live stream. And they were going to do some like sampling of soil there with the Vikram lander and stuff. I just think it's like such a win, and it makes me happy. And like I don't know why this makes me happy. I always loved like the view into like like mission control centers when space landings are happening. The Indian one is so chaotic. There's like 1 million people in there for some reason. And all these like uncles and aunties are just like having the time of their lives. It's really like uplifting and wonderful.
That's so cool. Okay, Kishore, there was also kind of some science woo this year, for lack of a better term.
Yeah. Will, what would you say if I just told you I've invented a room temperature superconductor? It just works.
Look, I would probably just be like, take your word for it and write a whole bunch of news stories and put it on like the nightly news about how it's going to revolutionize computing and the power grid and solve all of our energy problems. Maybe talk about new motor designs. Probably I'd ask Elon Musk and see what he thinks. And I definitely wouldn't try to replicate that or run it through some sort of, a vetting process or anything like that, though.
For those that have forgotten about this, the 1 week where room temperature superconductors ruled the internet, 2 South Korean scientists published a preprint claiming they had, with a new compound called LK99, achieved room temperature superconductivity. It was at what they claimed 104 degrees Celsius, which is pretty chill on the grand scheme of things. This LK99 is a lead copper complex. And this complex was essentially, they infused copper into this lead based mineral. The complications here is that the structure of this mineral is polycrystalline. So it's not like a one crystal structure throughout. And so it's prone to all sorts of contamination or misshapen kind of development of this complex. So when they claimed they had developed this particular complex, people were like, wait a minute, is this like actually a consistent thing, or are you getting just weird behavior because you don't have this homogeneous superconductor? People tried to replicate this in the weeks to come and basically found that it didn't work. But the crazy thing about LK99 is how one thread on Twitter from this one like amateur physicist went completely viral, and people are like, we've done it. People have done it. We've achieved it. We have made a room temperature superconductor. And then all sorts of weirdness started coming out from the scientists. It was one of those like, we have solved the world's energy problems to no, we didn't in a span of 48 hours. It was thrilling.
It was a real journey. It reminded me a lot of the Time or Newsweek story about cold fusion in like 1989. When some folks at, I think, Utah were like, hey, we got room temperature fusion happening over here. Just get your flying cars ready. We got the energy sources. We're going to make this happen. And then like nobody could repeat the work. And it turned out to be complete woo.
My favorite was I saw a scientist like quote tweet the initial thread and was like, sure. That was it. That was it.
This is the thing I miss about Twitter is that I miss these conversations and these interactions. Damn you, Elon Musk. Anyway, so what's gonna like? Nothing's happening with this. It's all like
no, it's
like,
not.
Yeah, it's not a real thing.
It's not a real thing. There was a lot of contamination probably in their experiment. Like we don't think that there is sort of malfeasance here or anything else like that. It's just like an experiment that wasn't controlled in a way that accounted for like all sorts of contamination and other effects within this. So it was like, it was an interesting idea to try. And so it was fine. It was like the hype train around like a non-peer reviewed paper getting out of control is really the story here.
I was gonna say this is like, is this the downside of like using archive instead of doing the normal peer review process? Because like if they had submitted this to Nature, they would have not published a preprint for it, right?
I think that's too far because like they didn't like release this paper on the preprint server and then have like a press conference where they're we did it. They like released it on this preprint server to like, you know, show to other scientists, and like publishing the work early is critical for things, especially like this, where you try to come up with validation, you need to see the formulation. Now, they weren't super forthcoming about like how they made this and the methods and all of that kind of stuff. That's a separate conversation.
Yeah.
But it was really like somebody else going on there and being like, this is it, everybody. We've done it. That turned it into a crazy moment. And it's this tension between like, you know, the old information wanting to be free adage and like actors acting badly with information.
Well, this is the science equivalent of those people that watch patent filings and look for an Apple patent. They're like, okay, I got the next iPhone here. 3 years from now, they're going to have a folding one. It folds twice. It turns into a little square. You put it in your pocket and then it's the size of a refrigerator.
Yeah, I think it happens. I chuckle about it. The whole thing. I thought it was hilarious, which leads me into like some of the stories that brought me the most delight this year.
Yeah.
And I'll start out by just saying like Iberian orca whales, just like huge thumbs up for me, because earlier this year, a set of Iberian orcas in the Strait of Gibraltar were just like FU boats and started ramming rudders on fishing ships in the area. And they started sinking boats. And at this point, we still don't know why this started happening. One scientist suggested that one of the orcas had a bad experience with another boat and likely informed other orcas in some way about this bad experience, leading to this sort of pack behavior.
Wow.
There's a slight downside to this in the sense that an open letter was published by a series of marine biologists in the wake of this, saying like, this is very funny, like, you know, like acknowledging just how this sort of lit up the internet. But at the same time, they're like, there will be reprisals against these orcas if this kind of stuff continues. These are like people's livelihood, these boats and stuff.
Yeah.
And they're really worried that like action will be taken against these orcas. And we're also anthropomorphizing these orcas pretty quickly. We're like, oh, yeah, some fishermen pissed them off and that's why they're hitting this. And we're like, it's not exactly how their mind works. So we have to be cautious about that. But also like F them boats.
Yeah, I mean, look, the billionaires don't pay their taxes. Their yachts are going to take the punishment. That's what the orcas say. And I, for one, welcome our new orca overlords.
I'm with you.
The thing about the orcas sharing knowledge between pods of orcas is because the other thing that came out this year is that the way they hunt great white sharks is fast. Apparently orcas love the taste of great white shark liver, and if they know that if they bite them in the right spot, they can just suck the liver right out of them, which is horrifying and nightmarish, but also kind of amazing. And like it's affecting the shark migrations, it seems like. Because the knowledge of how to do this has spread from orcapod to orcapod around the world in the last couple of years. So the war between the sharks and the orcas continues, I guess. Maybe the boats are just an innocent bystander.
Oh, those poor boats. What will they ever do?
Well, why will no one think of the super yachts, Kishore?
You know what we haven't done yet?
No.
A math story.
I love math.
We usually have a great math story. Do you have a good one for us?
So non-repeating tiles are like a math nerd thing that math nerds around the world have loved to think about for a long time. And for a long time, the idea was to find, what's the smallest number of tiles you can devise that will let you create a non-repeating pattern infinitely over an infinite plane. And previously, I think for a long time, years and years ago, this is a problem from the 50s or 60s. Somebody came up with a set of like 30,000 tiles, 25,000 tiles that you can use and find a completely non-repeating pattern. This shows up as a bit in Neil Stephenson's An Anthem book briefly. Like it's the kind of thing that like I filed away in the back of my mind for a long time. The current record as of last year was a set of 2 different tile shapes that you could tile infinitely and not have a repeating pattern.
Yeah, I will say for those that are like, what are they talking about? If you like rewind to like, high school mathematics, there'll be this idea of like Penrose tiling that will come up, and it's named after Roger Penrose. He's a famous mathematician / theoretical physicist who modeled a lot of black hole behavior. He won the Nobel Prize for his work on black holes in 2020. And he was trying to see if you could have a non-repeating pattern of tiles to cover a space to help explain like some of the black hole morphology or topology, excuse me. And Penrose tiles became like a high school kind of high school math problem that we'd often see. And these set of tiles, if you like Google Penrose tile, it'll probably like bring up a memory for you of these non-repeating tiles
if you're
covering
the right
a space.
Age, it turns out.
Yes. Oh yeah, we might be too old.
We're too old, Kishore. Yeah.
But this idea of like an infinite number of non-repeating tiles is like totally wild to me that they're able to like actually figure this out.
It's an absolute nightmare. And the amazing thing about this, I'm actually pulling up the article right now, but the amazing thing about it is it wasn't like some heavy duty mathematician who figured this out. It was actually a retiree who likes math. It's aperiodic tiling is the problem, is the name of the problem. The guy's name is David Smith, and his Wikipedia entry says David Smith, parentheses, hobbyist. He was a retired print technician from England who discovered basically a 13-sided polygon that it can be tiled infinitely with no repeating patterns. It's a single shape. It not just is a single shape, it's built out of hexagons. So the angles are all three specific angles. And the further work that came from his initial shape shows that he's discovered a whole class of shapes that can be aperiodically tiled to infinitely. So yeah, it's a whole new period of tile math. Now, the place that I'm disappointed, I'm going to say, when I was reading about this the other day, the first thing I found is that I can go download SVGs for my laser cutter right now and cut all the aperiodic Einstein tiles. It's just to be clear, Einstein is the German for one stone, or not named after Albert Einstein in this case, because it's one tile that you can tile infinitely. So I can cut on the laser cutter all the Einstein tiles I want. Nobody is yet making Einstein tiles for my bathroom floor. That's the yet.
Yet is the key word there.
Yeah, that's the final frontier as far as I'm concerned. I want aperiodic tiling in my house.
Oh, that's amazing idea.
Right.
Well, this is the end of Brad and Will Make a Tech Pod, as Will has embarked on a new career. All of a sudden, like, you're off the coast of Spain in your billionaire tile funded yacht, and orcas are attacking you. Look, that's what the future holds.
I don't know if you know how much money tile makers generally make, sure, but I don't think it's yacht money. Probably, it's definitely not something a orca would care about. But
I want to believe. I'll put a link to a story about David Smith in the Discord.
David Smith, Hobbyist?
David Smith, Hobbyist looks the part. I will just say, I don't want to stereotype how hobbyists look.
Okay,
this guy looks like a full-on hobbyist, and I couldn't be more proud, because it really illustrates that maybe I have the ability to become a Kishore Hari hobbyist on Wikipedia. That's honestly a life goal.
I just love that there's still room for somebody who's just an enthusiast to download a piece of software and solve a hard math problem that's 60 years old. That's amazing.
I love it. So we have one last story to kind of end that I think is so fun. Like, building off of what we talked about last year, we talked a lot about DeepMind's AlphaFold project, which was an AI tool to predict all the structures of proteins in the human body, and they predicted 600 to 700 million structures. And AI and science has like iterated in enormous ways this year. And
it's not woo. It's a good thing.
It's not woo, but it's also not quite reality. But like AlphaFold's a great example of it. So it's like, now we have all these predictions of proteins. What do you do with that? And so what they did is they released a new tool this year called Alpha Missense. Missense mutations are these genetic mutations where one amino acid is substituted for another in your body, and it causes big ramifications for like proteins that are produced. And oftentimes these have tremendous consequences on human health. They lead to like epilepsies, like major kind of conditions, because you have the wrong protein produced or no protein produced, then like certain functions of the body just don't happen. So these mutations are really important. So they took all this information about how proteins fold and basically then turned that into, let's look at all the possible missense mutations that can happen in the human body based off of that information, and then predict based on the information we have on how the proteins fold, which ones are going to be pathogenic, which ones are going to be benign, and which ones we're just like, don't really know based on what we see. And they released this tool. And then there's all this like clinical data they compared it to. And there's these places where this tool basically has disagreement with the clinical data that is like exciting, because now we can like explore, what is this disagreement about? Is this an area that we weren't thinking about before, and a mutation we have to really pay attention to? So we're seeing AI make that leap from using these large data sets into like actual digestible information that's informing scientific experiments really quickly. That's a span of 6 months that happened.
So it's interesting because the application is the thing that machine learning is for, right? Like you instead of using it to generate legal opinions that don't exist or make pictures of people doing things that they never did, you're actually sorting through a massive amount of data and finding things that are similar and weird.
Yes, but when you have powerful tools like that, you can also design really weird, funky experiments.
Okay, I love a funky experiment. So
a team at UC Berkeley that was studying epilepsy, they had 29 patients. And oftentimes when you're studying people with a developmental or mechanical problems, you'll use MRI imaging and have them perform a task while you're inside this MRI. I've done this for some like cognitive neuroscience stuff. You like just sit inside the giant magnet, and there's a screen above you that usually give you a series of questions or tasks. In this one, which was designed by the Night Lab at UC Berkeley, they played a sound clip to the people that had this condition. There was also some controls in there, and then recorded a brain scan. And then they used an AI algorithm to actually model out and reconstruct based off the neuron behavior what the song was. So they basically played them a song, recorded how the neurons were operating, and then tried to use an algorithm to recreate that song. From it.
Okay. I'm just going to, they took a picture of the person's brain while they were listening to the song. And then they made the song back from the picture of the brain. So it's like you're making a 3D model of something by looking at its shadow, basically.
Yeah, except it's even more complicated than that.
Of course, yeah.
So this is wild. And then they released the audio of what they reconstructed based off this algorithm.
I'm guessing where it says, "Will play this clip." This is where I play the clip, probably.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to play the clip right now. Wow, that is a lot of like organs and harmonics, and like I hear voices, but not really. It's really weird.
Yeah, so there's a lot of bias in this algorithm because it's like it's reconstructed. The model they built has a little bit of bias in it, in that they sort of tuned it for this situation. And it kind of sounds like a very low kilohertz like rendition of a song. This is a song, Will. It's a fellow old like myself. You've heard this song. Do you have any guesses on what the song is?
I've listened to it like 3 times now. Da, 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 da. Something go on. Da, 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 da. You're not smiling.
You're not far off. Da, 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 da. It's not go on. I will say it's the word they're saying there is wall. Not go on.
Oh, is it Pink Floyd's The Wall?
It's Another Brick in the Wall Part 2. And like you can kind of hear, once you like actually know that that's a song they're recreating, you can actually hear it.
It feels like a slow. Okay, so what you know what it sounds like? I mean, it'll be, you've heard it by now. It sounds like when you used to download MIDI files in the 90s and you would play them on whatever bad MIDI stack your PC sound card had, and like you'd flip it to like the organ and hall setup and then play it like half speed, and that's kind of where you end up. That's a trip.
For all the silly stuff that AI is being used for this year, I just want to say there's equally interesting and weird applications in science going on that make me smile. Now, do I think this is going to lead to some revolutionary breakthrough or anything else like that? No, but it's just kind of fun application of the technology.
Well, and there are, we had to, it was a hard cut to get to the list that we got for this show. There was some stuff that I didn't even put on the list that people are doing with vision research, where they're taking like direct feed signals from optic nerves and turning them into pictures on screens and things like that. Like there are things that are happening with computers and machine learning and the brain that don't involve killing thousands of monkeys, that are actually potentially impactful down the road. So I maybe we'll see.
This was a fun year of science again. This wasn't as dynamic as some past years where we had some discoveries and developments that just sort of blew the roof off. But at the same time, like, what a year. Like, we were talking about like treatments for obesity at scale, curing diseases, slamming stuff into the moon, orcas slamming into boats. Like, not a bad year.
Yeah, and I might get a new bathroom floor. Kishore, thank you so much for coming by. Where can people find you?
You know what? Just find me on the Discord.
Yeah, you're there.
That's the place. Yeah, that's the place to find me if you want my take on anything. Just a warning, you don't need my take on things, but if you'd want one, I'm happy to deliver one.
The place that I love your take is to separate the real science from the woo, Kishore. It's always helpful. So
I'm going to just be exclusively in there talking about tiling bathrooms and bidets from now on. I think that is my sweet spot.
What kind of grout do you like? You like a sandy grout? You like something a little more?
I'm definitely like a gray grout, like the white grout. Too much upkeep.
Yeah, I have to get the industrial. I have white grout in my tub. I have to get the industrial size jar of that goo that you spray on and leave there for 5 hours to burn the mildew out. It's awful.
All right, 2024. Look for Will and Kishore's tiling company.
Yeah, and maybe we'll have to get you that 5-timer jacket. Kishore, thank you so much for coming by. And that will do it for this week's edition of the Tech Pod. For Brad Shoemaker, I'm Will Smith. Thanks everybody for listening. As always, Brad and Will Made a Tech Pod is a 100% listener supported show. We wouldn't be here without the kindness of our wonderful audience of people. If you would like to find out how to support the show, you can go to patreon.com/techpod. Again, That's patreon.com/techpod, where for $5 a month, you get access to the fabulous TechPod Discord full of a bunch of wonderful nerds who are into many of the same things that you probably are. You also get access to the monthly patron episode where Brad and I talk about whatever we're working on, what we're thinking about, what we're excited about. That's maybe outside the scope of the normal podcast. With that, thank you as always to all of our patrons, but a very special thank you goes out to our executive producer tier patrons, including Nick Johnston, Paddle Creek Games makers of Fractured Veil, Andrew Slosky, Jordan Lippett, Bunny Fiend, or is that Bunny Fiend, the? Thread Club supports Octothorpe Desks and Pets, Joel Krauska, Twinkle Twinkie, David Allen, James Kamek, and Pantheon, makers of the HS3 high-speed 3D printer. Thank you all so much for your support, and we will see you all next week.